Memento. Okay, that's official. All right, as I mentioned, my name is Simon Cazares. Now I gotta be very formal. Hi, my name is Simon. I'm team leader. Team leader for the KW South Bay Torrance office. Been in real estate for 25 years, 25 long years. So I'm a veteran. I think I'm a veteran in this field. You know, I've been blessed through the initial process of seeing, you know, a lot of different cycles throughout my career, which again, it doesn't matter what cycle you're in, as long as you can kind of adapt, modify, and transition and shift, it doesn't matter. You will succeed. You know, the beauty is that people will always need a buy. People will always need a sell. That's a given. Are you aligned to be able to do so? And this is the reason this contract is very, very crucial. As we approach the end of the year, this is going to be our new RPA, folks. And if you don't have a copy, I have a copy up here, up in the front, if you need a new copy of the new purchase agreement. I will also share it on the Zoom link as soon as I share my computer. But again, it is a big change to the new purchase agreement that all of us need to adapt to. Now, I love it because it has a lot of pillars and a lot of information in the very beginning, okay? So the form that I will be introducing you to will give you an understanding and a grasp and, you know, the do's and don'ts, but more so how to navigate the process. Now, last time when we had part one of the RPA, I was telling you about the book that I highly recommend. Well, folks, I finally got the book. This is the book, and I'm going to share with you if you want to take a snapshot at this. All right, for the people on Zoom, this is the California Residential Purchase Agreement and related forms. This is the most recent edition. Now, this is not a cheap book. You can order it through the California Association of Realtors, but it has step-by-step illustrations, information regarding the new RPA and related documents as well. As a member of the California Association of Realtors, the awesome part of it is you get it at a discount. I believe that this book only is about $175. Okay, this is what attorneys, mediators, arbitrators utilize for the purpose to understand the dynamics and the complexity of the RPA, okay, and brokers in general, okay. I'm one that utilizes this consistently. I mean, I want to say that I have everything up here in my cabeza, on my head, but unfortunately, I am not that smart when it comes to memorizing every detail of the RPA. But this is a great reference and a great book to have as part of your arsenal. Trust me when I say this. This is the book that will give you the ins and outs and a good understanding, a good grasp of how the purchase agreement works. That's simple. Now, the second book that I also recommend, is the January 2021 Legal Tools. Okay, so out in Zoom land, here you go. Now, again, this is a book that I highly recommend. Now, the awesome part of this book, it goes into a lot of the components of disclosures, understanding the transfer disclosure statement, the seller questionnaire, the SPQ. It has letters and samples, and it has summary charge of, you know, when representing a single family residence up to 4 units. It also has charge for leases. It has charge for commercial as well. So it really gives you a breakdown of everything that the California Association of Realtors has. Now, this was again in the beginning of 2021. There's been some changes since the beginning, but rest assured, come January of 2022, most likely they're going to revise it or update the book. But again, it's a quick reference guide to understanding what we do on a regular basis. And the importance, right? The importance of understanding your role, your responsibility, and your fiduciary goal of closing the deals and understanding. Now, with all that I state, I got to put this disclaimer because I know I have people from other offices. Always speak with your broker, okay? With any guides and advice. And that goes with any classes that the local association of realtors will have attorneys speaking on behalf of the RPA. They will always reference and go back to speak with your broker regarding anything related to the contract. So I'm putting that as a disclaimer that, you know, a lot of the stuff may come across a little different. Well, that's not the way I heard it from, you know, my broker. So I'm putting that disclaimer. Now, this is a reference, this is an educational platform, and just a dive, right, into the new RPA. There's a lot of changes to it, and I just want to make sure that our office, the South Bay office, is aligned and prepared for 2022, which, you know, I definitely appreciate you for being here and devoting, you know, some time. Now, as I always say, the information is dry. It's very, very boring. Okay, take it, yeah. Like Sue says, take it for what it is, okay? At the end of the day, there's really not much to make it that exciting. I can't. I don't have that magic wand, that magic pill that says, boom, you know, we're gonna make this fun and enjoyable. I'm gonna do my very best, but also I think last time I didn't even give anyone a break. So everyone was holding in the intensity, and I realized their faces were a little flushed, but I couldn't put two and two together. And I realized, holy crap, I did not give them a break to go to the restroom. So with that being said, all right, for the people on Zoom, you know, obviously that does not matter, but the people here in the classroom, you know, we will have a break 5 minutes to the hour, okay? So right now it's 12 something. So at 12:55, we'll take a quick 5-minute break. And then again at 1:55, we'll take our second break, okay? So that way it gives you time to stretch, gives you time to go to the restroom, and it gives you time to maybe get some more goodies that we have here. So if you are still on Zoom, you got time. There is plenty of food here from Panda Express. Please take it. Otherwise, I'm going to have to take it. Okay. And that's not what I want to do. All right. So let's go ahead and jump into. So I'm going to do a real quick recap, and then we'll dive right in. I'm not going to talk the mumble jumble of life experience and everything we talked, because I think I spend more time on personal than I did with the contract. I think in the 3 hours we got to about 2 or 3 pages, you know, which is not winnow, okay? But I rest assured today I will make sure that I complete it and be able to answer any and all your questions, okay? And then also, you know, raise your hand or say, Simon, I have a question regarding anything. You know, we like to wait till the end of the session to ask any questions, but if it's something of urgency, please, people that are on Zoom, just raise your hand. I'll be checking to make sure that I answer any and all questions, okay? And then Sophia, it looks like you're in Riverside. Unfortunately, by the time you get out here to the South Bay, it'll probably be gone. No worries, no worries. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, as I mentioned, the California Residential Purchase Agreement. Let me go ahead and share my computer real quick. And bingo bango on this. All right, I hope everyone can see the RPA. Now, as I mentioned last month, this form will change by next month. I can promise you that's going to happen. So whatever I talk then and whatever I'm talking now, and then whatever happens when this gets launched next month, it's going to have some tweaks, some adjustments. Okay, so what I'm talking is just what I'm talking about today. There may be some revisions to it next month, just understand that that's just the way that the California Association of Realtors works. All right. So what's so cool about this new purchase agreement, you know, it sets the tone, it sets the parameters, but it more so sets everything up front. Now, the new RPA, as I mentioned to you last time, there's 16 pages long. Sue, when you started real estate, how many pages were on the RPA?
1.
I hope you heard that. Sue says that there was 1. When I started real estate, I believe there was 4 or 5 pages to the RPA. Now we're 16 deep. And guess what? 5 years from now, we'll probably be 25 deep into the purchase agreement. Okay. So for the future realtors out there, God bless you guys. Okay. I'm hoping I don't get to see more because you know it's like pushing, you know, the time to really educate the realtors on the new RPA. And that's a given. Every year, there's always 2 revisions and updates to all contracts. Either they remove a contract, or they add a brand new contract, or they do some revisions to it, similar to what we see right here in the RPA. Okay, everything that's in red and yellow. Yes, Sue.
Are there other forms that are also revised for 2022?
Yeah. So on our next team meeting, I will be explaining on all the new forms and revised forms as well.
I figured it wouldn't be just this one.
No. That's a very good question, Sue. But yes, that is completely correct. There is some new forms added to the to zip forms. All right. So I remember when the RPA, we used to handwrite everything. It didn't have already all this embedded into the contracts. There was just a bunch of gaps and lines and blank lines that we just had to fill in the information. Now everything
Press hard.
Yeah, and press super hard, right? Yeah. See, we're going way back. Way back in time.
Hey, Michelle's on Zoom, so.
Is Michelle on Zoom? No way. All right,
I saw
awesome.
her on there.
Beautiful. So welcome, Michelle. All right, so you know, as I mentioned to you last time, you know, the breakdown, the agency, the disclosures, the confirmation is pretty self-explanatory. What has changed from the current RPA and the new RPA, it's what's called a grid. Okay, this is the grid, ladies and gentlemen, that I'm speaking on, is the grid that has been enhanced and then ultimately added to the purchase agreement, which is really cool because it provides you with bullet points to everything that we must know. Price, right? The price of the offer submitted. What I like, it has additional terms. So look at the far left, it says paragraph. Then the second, it says paragraph title or contract term. And then the third section is the terms and conditions, and then any additional terms. So now what's going to happen is that all this information, when you're drafting an RPA, it's going to allow you to put all this in. Okay. So when the listing agent gets the offer, everything is going to be right there, right in front. Instead of scrambling, trying to look for it through pages and pages, everything has been embedded into this grid that makes it super convenient and super easy to understand. Now, purchase price, obviously very self-explanatory. Close of escrow. Okay, send the information. It's just tweaked a little bit. Now, please understand they haven't done much of moving around the offer. All they did was just condense everything into 1 page, 2 page, and 3 page. But everything on here is already currently with the with the current RPA. But all they did was created it with this form. It's called a grid. So you had a question?
Well, I do. Can we go back up to 2C?
2C. Yes, ma'am.
ABA.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure about that form.
Okay, so that's a So Sue is asking about section 2. C is in Charles. If you are checking off more than one brokerage represents, you're either explaining it to the buyer or to the seller that additional brokers are in, okay? If you are representing a buyer with 2 agents, okay, like you're co-listing as an example, what you're disclosing to the seller and the listing agent is that we are representing the buyer, but it's 2 agents or 2 agents from 2 different brokerages. And that's where the ABA form will be included. And the awesome part of it, folks, is that as soon as you click on it, it will populate the form. It will populate the form. Now, we never really recommend that you work with two outside agents. You as the primary agent, right, as Keller Williams, and then bringing another buyer agent involved, because it gets a little convoluted and a little confusing. But the law states that you could work with an outside brokerage and agent, okay? And this will satisfy those requirements, okay? So to answer your question, Sue, that's exactly what it is. It's more than one brokerage represents, seller or buyer. If you know this ahead of time, then obviously you're going to put that information. Additional broker acknowledgement CAR form ABA is attached. Okay. Any other questions regarding that section? Beautiful. Section B, as I mentioned, is the potential competing buyer and seller. Obviously, you know, the possible representation agreement of more than one buyer or seller. What that really clearly states is if you are submitting an offer on behalf of client A, but you also have a client B that wants to submit an offer on the same property. So all you're doing is disclosing this information to the end user, which is the buyers, saying that it's not just you that I'm working with, but it's multiple buyers, and that buyer may also be submitting an offer on the same property that we submitted an offer. So it's a disclosure, it's material facts about our position. And it's for the protection and liability, because at the end of the day, who do they always want to sue? They want to sue realtors for some reason, right? They think that we have these deep pockets, you know, and they utilize our errors and omissions to claim that. And then they have these wazoo attorneys saying, well, we can go after the E&O insurance, you know, so that's what it really boils down to. So this is the reason we have to protect ourselves and our best interest. Disclose. Yes, sir. Question? Oh, question. All right, let's continue.
I'm not gonna go up there for you.
All right, you know, so purchase price, close of escrow, pretty self-explanatory. Expiration of offer, 3 days after all buyer signatures, you know, which is already embedded that by 5 p.m. So if the offer gets submitted today, is today considered one of the 3 days? The answer is no. Today is considered 0 days. So tomorrow, which would be Saturday, would be the first of 3 days. So Saturday, Sunday, Monday by 5 p.m., as stated, is when this offer expires. Now you can modify that as well. You can condense it and say to the seller, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I need an answer ASAP. Whoa. Okay. Or you can ask for, the buyer can ask for more time to give the seller to make a decision. Now, it already defaults 3 days as it states on the contract, okay? Now, what they added was what's in red, all buyers, okay? All buyers means if it's a husband and wife, brother to brother, brother, sister, you know, or even investors, you know, investors buying the property, they're indicating all buyers. Any questions on expiration of offer? Initial deposit, again, you know, you can put a flat or a percentage, okay? Typically, agents utilize percentage as a way to, you know, contribute to the deposit. Now, if you look at the far right, it says within 3 or business days after acceptance, by wire transfer. They're making it super easy for realtors, okay? It's so convenient now. So now it states right there when the initial deposit is 3 days, okay? So if we submit the offer today, is today considered one of the 3 days? The answer is no, okay? Today is considered 0 days. So the buyer has Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Now the question here is, what time is that money supposed to be wired into escrow? Okay, doesn't give you the answer to that, right? Does anyone want to guess on that time frame? Okay, you can argue the fact that by close of business. Now, what is close of business? 5 p.m. Well, talk to a lot of escrow officers and they'll tell you a different story. Yeah, I mean, we don't pick up the phone at 5, but we're still working till 8 o'clock. And the wire doesn't stop, you know, the money from coming into their trust account, right? So technically speaking, by 11:59 p.m., folks, on that day, so the money can be in their escrow and it'll satisfy our position where the seller cannot send us the notice to perform because we did not abide by the agreement. You all with me on that? Okay, any questions regarding that? All right, awesome. You guys are phenomenal. You guys are a great group to teach. All right. All right, the next one is the increased deposit. Obviously, a buyer has the right to increase that deposit. Let's just say that the buyer is somewhat cash poor, right? They're still winning on the sale of their home in order to pull the net proceeds, right? In order to purchase their new upleg or their new purchase. So they may say we can only put 5,000 that we have right now in good faith, but we also would like to increase our deposit in a couple of weeks from now in good faith that we are serious buyers, okay? So that's satisfied that if you check increased deposit money placed into escrow after the initial deposit. And again, you can add a percentage or a flat amount. And then also on the far right, upon removal of all contingencies. So you can also state and stipulate that you're utilizing a contingency regarding the increased deposit, okay, which is pretty interesting. That was never in any of the contracts in the past, and it's more so not right now stipulated on the contract, but that's going to be something new where you can use that leverage as a condition in order to satisfy this position. Loan amount, obviously, first interest rate. The loan amount is how you calculate the loan amount is obviously subtracting of the amount that the buyer is going to put as a down payment. If the buyer is going to put 0 as a VA loan, FHA 3.5, conventional 5, 10, 15, 20, or even more. I've seen people put more money into as a down payment. Whatever that amount is, you subtract the down payment and that gives you the loan amount. That's the amount that you put on here on the loan amount, not the actual purchase price, because it's gonna calculate the arithmetic on it and it'll throw the numbers off because the number on top has to calculate the number on the bottom. And if it's off, it's gonna tell you, hey, it's off. What's going on? Then that's when I'm gonna get the call. Simon, I have a situation. Okay, but what's the situation? Well, the number on top is not matching on the number on the bottom. What's going on? Well, it's probably because your math is off. Okay, the first thing I go is I dive into the loan amount. All right, and then that'll kind of tell you what the buyer would have to bring in to close this deal. Okay, any questions regarding that? Fixed rate, yes, sir.
Oh, when it says not to exceed in that red, is that like, if people put in a number there, is that a contingency of the contract?
It could.
So like if the rate goes above what they write there, you
Yeah.
get a cancellation rate?
Yeah. So that's a very good question, and thank you for bringing it up, Derek. So yes, I always emphasize and I always stress, folks, put a percentage. Well, Simon, I don't know the percentage. Well, ask the lender. The lender is the one that's giving the fixed interest rate to the consumer based on their FICO score. Based on their ratios will determine what their fixed rate is going to be. Okay, you want to put that number on there because if that number changes, that gives the buyer an opportunity to cancel or back out of the deal. You leave it blank and the rates go to 10%, guess what? You cannot use that as an avenue to cancel. Hello, okay, be smart. Put a rate not to exceed. Yes, sir.
Do you still want to pad it a little bit?
You can pad it, you can do whatever you want. If you want to be aggressive and you know there's an iffy on it, there's little ways of saying, well, we're gonna do it at 2%. But any savvy listing agent is gonna realize, wait a minute here, are they buying down this rate? What the heck is going on? So I'll probably ask that question. That's what makes a savvy agent realize and look at all the conditions. And a lot of agents unfortunately fall short, and it's an oversight on their part that they realize, holy crap, I didn't realize that they put a little rate on there. So look at all the parameters and then also speak with your lender. Hey, this buyer, Mr. and Mrs. John Smith here made an offer, but their rate is at 2%, 30-year fixed. Is that what's going on right now? Your lender is going to tell you. Yeah, I don't know, they might be buying down the rate, but that'll give you a conversational aspect to talk to the buyer's agent. Hey, is the buyer buying down the rate? Because the rate is very expensive. It's usually a percentage of the purchase price. So 1 or 2 points to reduce that rate is substantial. Yes, sir.
It also looks like there's no room that they can't write best prevailing rate.
No, but you can add it on where it says right here, other,
Okay,
right here on other.
so when they say best prevailing rate, that's just kind of like another.
So that's, well, usually the prevailing or best prevailing rate is really a disclaimer from the listing agent saying, okay, whatever the current rate is, the buyer will have to qualify based on that. So I'm very sketchy about that. Listing agents usually put best prevailing rate, but they don't see anything. So it locks in the buyer as well. So be very, very careful. Now, I encourage you to do so because again, it locks the opportunity to understand that the buyer may have an exit out of it if there's no rate involved in it. Okay, yes, sir.
So if you don't put a interest rate down or you put best available rate, you really don't have a meeting of the minds because you don't have an interest rate. So you've got the buyer automatically has an out because you don't have a.
100%. You're correct. And see, a lot of real estate agents unfortunately bypass that thinking, well, they're going to close the deal. And for the most part, a lot of agents do close the deal. Okay. But it's one of those rare occasions where what if it doesn't go the way it's supposed to go? And now, you know, you wasted time, effort, and energy. You're the listing agent. And then the buyer decides at the last minute back out. And, you know, the seller has spent some money on this. So this is the reason you kind of have to strategize and make sure that you dissect this offer in the very beginning. Remember, there's negotiations throughout the entire process. Negotiations in the beginning, negotiations during, and then even at the end of the stretch of the deal as it's about to close, there might be some negotiations that need to be done. I'll be the first to tell you, I've seen situations where agents have to give up some of their commission money to make this deal work, okay? And it's unfortunate that it happens, and it can happen right at the very end of the transaction. So as I mentioned, beginning, middle, and even towards the end, you're consistently negotiating. Okay, good questions. Then conventional, if check, obviously, if what type of financing it is, FHA, VA, even seller finance or other. Okay, it's already defaulted as a conventional, I'm sorry. Additional finance, obviously, if there is a second or a seller carryback, then obviously you would utilize that. Then section E3 talks about occupancy type. Is it going to be a primary? Oops, sorry.
Simon, you're muted.
Thank you. See? Awesome. So I've seen situations, so I love this paragraph now because it now adds secondary to it. And it adds investment. And then it adds that it is obviously if you're submitting an offer as a primary, you're buying the property with the intent to occupy the property. You're buying the property with the intent as a secondary, a vacation home, then it gives you that option to do so. And then obviously, last but not least, is the investment aspect of it. You're buying this as an investment. Why do you think that was added into the contract? Anyone? Chris?
I think some of the lenders won't lend if it's a primary, it's not your primary home.
Well, it's not that,
FHA.
yeah, it's not that they won't lend, it changes the terms and conditions and rate, you know, based on what your position is. So, and I've seen circumstances, and I want to be open and very transparent in my position, folks, is, you know, buyers want to do something that save interest. You know, I caution you, if you're a realtor involved in that, and you know the real intent, be very, very, very careful, because if this comes back, you know, especially government loans such as a VA or FHA, you know, it can definitely not be a good day for us. Okay. All right, and then last on that is the balance of the down payment. It would calculate, and then the purchase price, and that price would be the price that you submit the offer originally. Up on the very top, where it's where is it at now? Right here. Right here. See, I'm trying to look for it up here. Remember, our current purchase agreement is like, wait a minute, it's throwing me off too, but it's right here, folks. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and continue on part 2, because we got a lot of information to provide. Again, as I was talking to you last time, you know, the paragraph title, contracts, terms and conditions, and additional terms. This is again part 2, page 2 of the grid, is seller credit, if any, to buyer. So here, if you check that off or put a percentage, what you're telling the seller is, hey, you know what, we are asking for some type of concessions. Okay, and those concessions are coming from the seller's proceeds, either 5,000, 10,000, or a percentage of it as part of the calculation and purpose for the contract. Okay. Seller credit to be applied to closing costs or other. Okay, so they put and emphasize other as an avenue of what the intention is, why the buyer is asking for some type of credit in order to satisfy this requirement. Because remember, it's not just the listing agent, the seller, the buyer, and the buyer's agent and escrow that see the form. It's the underwriter will get a copy of all this. And if you know, underwriters are very notorious. Their job is to make sure they dissect these forms to make sure that they meet the conditions, because ultimately what happens is they package the loan and then they sell it in the secondary market. They want to make sure that it's a qualified, and all the parameters to sell off the loan is there. Otherwise, they have to retain this loan and maybe in the future try to sell it. So that's why they dissect and critique these forms and ask a lot of questions. This is the reason the processor and the loan officer are back and forth, you know, dealing with the underwriter. And this is the other reason the loan processor and also lenders wait till the very end to submit it to underwriter, because then that opens up a can of worms. So they want to make sure that they're aligned and making sure that the questionnaires and they have everything aligned, because the underwriter is going to come back and say, well, what is this? And then they might want to dissect and give a little bit more. And maybe that's not the direction that the loan officer or the processor really wants to, because that opens up other opportunities to deny or decline the loan. Additional finance terms, again, if you are asking for any additional terms, then you have that section in writing there. H1, 2, and 3, verification of all cash. Okay. If it is attached to the offer, 3 days, verification of down payment, verification of loan application, which is again, everything concise right there in the scope in the eyes of the listing agent. All of it is already defaulted to 3 days, but can the buyer and the buyer agent modify it? The answer is yes, they can. And there's the checkbox that allows you to add or reduce the days to provide these forms. Remember, everything, as I mentioned, is all about negotiation. The tighter the contract, the more desirable the contract and offer looks to the seller. Verification of loan application, pre-qualification, pre-approval, full underwriter approval. I love this. This is added now to the RPA, where in the past, it would only ask for a pre-qual letter or a pre-approval, which one or the other. Now they threw on that, hey, you know what? Some of these buyers are already underwritten. Do you approve? And so it really paints the picture and allows the transparency of the listing agent and the seller to gauge, the buyer's, profile here, that we have these segues and we know exactly where the buyer is. And that shows good faith, but it shows that this buyer is ready to rock and roll. Someone that's pre-qualified may take a week or so before they get to pre-approval or even underwriter approval as well, or pre-approval, I should say. Okay. Initial final verification, that's the same, but now it's up in the front, so that the buyer and the seller know and acknowledge that the 5 days prior, folks, 5 days prior to close of escrow, the buyer has the right to do a final walkthrough on the property. And it's not a contingency, it's just an avenue to make sure that the buyer is buying the property in the same condition as they originally saw it. And any request of repairs that was requested upon the buyer and approved and agreed upon the seller has been satisfied. And if not, then obviously on the VP form, you will put that as an explanation to delay the process of closing. We don't want the seller to get the proceeds, so we'll delay it. And that's the whole purpose of this VP form to be utilized. But I like this again because it sets all the conditions right there, folks, to have the buyer, the seller see every term of the purchase agreement. Assignment request, okay, if the property will be assigned. Now, all purchase agreements, single, duplex, triplex, and fourplex are not assignable, okay, are not assignable. Meaning that the only way it can be assigned to another buyer is the approval of the seller. The seller has to approve it. So have you seen on the RPA an investor with a corporation or an investor or developer put, assignee or assigned to, from their name? Mr. Smith assigns it and then leaves it to a corporation or assignee in general, meaning that the buyer has the right to assign it to another end user. So what this condition states is that if there is an assignment request from the buyer, that the request be in writing, but ultimately that condition to be released within the 17 days of acceptance. Okay. Now, this is what I love about this on new RPA is all your contingency, folks. Times to remove the contingencies. Look at all the 17. Gosh, don't you wish you were 17 again? I wish I was 17. God. Let me think, 17. And I know we have some young agents in the training room, but I don't think they're 17 anymore. But yeah, guess what? Everything, including the loan. Look at that, the loan, 17 days. Before it was 21 days. So everything is all 17 days. Loan, 17 days. Or no contingency. Appraisal, 17 days. Or no appraisal contingency. Now, I like what they added to the appraisal contingency. If it's an FHA or a VA loan, the removal of appraisal contingency does not eliminate appraisal cancellation right without the FBAC. And I think, Chris, you and I were having a chat about this not too long ago. Okay, so it just puts clarity, folks. That's what it does. It puts clarity in our position. Love, love, love this. Okay. Investigation of property, 17 days. Information access to the property, 17 days. Buyer right to access the property for informational purposes only. And this is where a buyer goes in releasing contingencies right off the bat. Meaning that the buyer still has the right, even though they have released any and all contingencies right off the bat. Physical inspections, disclosures, appraisal, loan contingency. The buyer has the right to release everything as an avenue to present their strong offer to the sellers. But what it also says is that even though the buyer has released those conditions, doesn't mean that they cannot still have access to the property. You cannot stop them from doing so within the time period, which again states what? 17 days. So with that being said, and I've seen it and I've been to battle for a lot of you where, you know, they submit an offer, release these conditions, and the listing agent saying, well, you released all contingencies, we're not going to show you the property. Bull crap. Okay, I really want to say the other word, but for the integrity of the class, and I know it's being recorded, I want to make sure that we understand that even so, the buyer still has the right within the time frame to look into the property just for their own satisfaction. Because they may go with the intent, sight unseen, right? Buy the property, boom. And I've done that. I'll be the first. I've done that where I buy a property without even looking at it. Property that I bought on Lawndale, I didn't even look at it. I just bought it sight unseen. Okay. And then I realized, holy crap, what did I get myself into? Just kidding. Okay, but you could go in there. So with this information access disclaimer says the following: it's not a contingency and does not create additional cancellation rights for the buyer. Okay, but it gives the incentive that the buyer has right still to do what they need to do to make sure that whatever estimates, maybe they're remodeling the property, or maybe they just want to get a concise understanding of the floor plan, we as listing agents and sellers cannot stop. And if we do, then we as the listing agent and the seller are breaching the contract. Okay. Preliminary title report, common interest disclosures, review of lease or liens. That this is again for investment properties that are tenant occupied. Okay. And what it says on the far right, removal or waiver of contingencies. And it says the following: any contingencies in L1, L7 may be removed or waived by attaching a contingency removal form CR and checking the applicable box therein, removing or waiving at time of offer. And again, it says that it's against the agent's advice or broker advice. The CR clearly says that any suggestions are the suggestions of the buyer. The buyer in good faith is doing it, not because of us influencing them. It's the buyer's discretion and decision that allows them to release certain contingencies. Because what is being risked? what is the one thing that the buyer may risk in losing? Their deposit, their initial deposit. So we don't want to be that killer, right? The listing, or excuse me, the buyer's agent responsible because we guided our clients to release a condition and now they pay the consequences. And now the seller is challenging and wants to go after the buyer's deposit. At the end of the day, it's the buyer's decision and their decision only. And we have to put that disclaimer that says that you understand that by releasing a contingency, you're acting against the broker's advice. Okay? More so that by doing so, you are holding us harmless of anything that happens if you do so. Okay? That's how we protect ourselves. Okay? We always want to do the right thing. Then it includes the CR attachment, right? You're attaching the CR right there, which is the contingency removal. Any questions regarding L1 through L8? Yes, sir.
If somebody writes an offer with a CR all attached, they cannot, once the seller accepts it and going to escrow, buyer can't back out for any reason, or they still can,
The buyer can back out at any given time.
even with the CR all in.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah. I can go in there, folks, submit an offer, release all contingencies, every contingency. And then the next day decide, you know what? I changed my mind. I'm backing out of this deal. Okay. Now, who breached the contract? Obviously, I did.
Yeah.
But what are the recourses that I have? The recourses that I have is I don't buy the property, but the seller may go after my deposit. That's the recourse that the seller has.
Unless there's a material fact.
Even
Pops up.
even if it's a material fact, okay, that comes up later, remember, you release that as a condition. Okay, so what you're telling the seller and the listing agent that you're buying the property in its as-is condition, and also with any new material facts, which will give you the right to review. And ultimately, we can argue that. Remember, at the end of the day, the cool thing about these forms, and I think I mentioned this to you last time, is what I call the black and white of the contract. And then I also mentioned the spirit of the contract, right? These contracts are known to bend, okay? Bend enough where sometimes it may crack, but these forms bend. Just because the contract says it in black and white, does that mean it goes that way? No, no. At the end, it really depends on the buyer and the seller to determine. Because I've seen firsthand where the buyer releases all contingency, signs off on the cancellation to give the money to the seller, and then 24 hours changes their mind. And until the escrow releases their addendum canceling, the money stays in escrow. And this particular circumstances did happen to one of our agents. And guess what? The buyer was able to retain 90% of their deposit back after releasing all contingencies and sending out the cancellation to escrow, sign and agree, money to go to the seller. This is the reason we see on the RPA, what does it say? California Residential Purchase Agreement and joint escrow. That's where they get us. That's where escrow protects themselves. Just because we cancel doesn't necessarily mean unilaterally escrow will just release it to the buyer or to the seller. They also want to reinforce their position and crystal clear that they are also going to be providing their cancellation. Then that's when the money gets delivered to whoever party is entitled to it. Okay, any question? Hope that kind of answers your question, sir. Cool. All right, let's continue. Seller or buyer property, seller of buyer's property is not contingent unless checked. So this is your COP, okay? So if you have and this is again on page 2 of the current RPA, the COP is if the buyer has a property that they must sell in order to pull the proceeds to put the down payment to qualify for this new purchase, then you must disclose that, okay? Don't be that agent, folks, and I've seen this firsthand. You want to make your offer look pretty, you do not check off the COP in hopes that the listing agent considers your offer because it's not contingent upon the buyer selling their home. I've seen this happen and I've seen disasters over this because the property never sells and you're in limbo now, and now you got a listing that's frustrated, a listing agent that's frustrated, and a seller that's frustrated because we can't close. Be transparent in your position, okay? Otherwise, wait to start submitting offers until you know that the buyer's property is about to close. Don't take that risk. You all with me on this? You all understand the COP and how that works? If not, ask me, folks. Ask me, because this is what we call a chain train transaction. They're fun, they're stressful, and they can drive you bananas. There's too many multiple hands involved in this. More so if you're the listing agent representing the seller, and now you got a buyer that submitted an offer, but you also submitted an offer on your client, and you're in escrow on their outlay, and now that listing agent and that seller bought another property, and it's just one after another, and everyone is simultaneously, concurrently trying to close. It's very stressful, okay? This is where I got all the gray hairs, folks, okay, with these darn COPs. Just kidding, just kidding. All right, any questions regarding COP? All right, let's continue. I don't want people, hey, let's take a quick break. It's 1:55, guys. Take a stretch. All right. It gives me time to drink a little bit of water, guys. All right, so we'll be back in a few minutes. We'll start in about 1 o'clock.
So how long are they gonna keep the old RPA up on like 6 months?
Probably till next month.
Oh, that's it? Oh, okay, cool. Offers right now, the old RPA.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I did see it.
brought Panda? Who brought Panda? Oh, really? That's different. On the already,
You don't put him as jam here. You did? But you know, at least it's fresh. It's fresh. I like the fact that I can see them walk right in, right there. So, when you first started.
I thought it was a book.
Because it's weird. It's like some picture when you zoom in, it's super, it's so weird.
Really?
And then it's like, everybody thought you were Ron's daughter or something, because you guys have the same last name, and they're like, is this your daughter? You're like, no. And then some other, I got so many friend requests, and they're like single men. They look American, but they have like John punchy last name, or you know, like when you look into them, like.
Yeah.
When I saw yours.
Oh, sorry. That's so funny. I wonder if I got pixelated.
And there was another person, because I'm trying to look through her thing, and it's the same sweet picture. Hi, how are you? Oh, next thing, I'm like, who's your friend? And she's friendly some realtors. I'm like, is she?
That's so funny. Let's pixelate on Facebook.
Yeah, I think that one of them very. You just click on it.
Yeah.
It should be clear, but it was like, you're like, is that my phone?
Maybe it's because I posted it from my phone and not from the computer.
Yeah, there's some issue for your.
Oh, yeah.
One of the friends that the one more.
Why are you trying to find me? That's funny. Yeah, well, I'm not a lot.
So you just stop.
Like, there's a lot of people trying to connect.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I don't find every person that, because all of a sudden I'm seeing all of your marketing and stuff, and that's all I see, and it's like,
Yeah.
how are you finding it? You know? Yeah. Uninated, yeah, the point where it's like, you know what, I just think that I love business. My personal
Thank you.
is not all business. Like, it's like food and dogs. If you don't like food and dogs. But it's also keeping in touch virtually with all the animals that I know. I have friends from California. At my high school reunion, it's like, I haven't seen you in so many years. Jesus.
Do you know, I've never spent all that on Facebook, when people start to love Fox that you should be friends person. That is so.
Some people are totally unrecognizable. My friends are like, they look the same. I'm like, I think that's a compliment.
How's the boys? They're good.
Really?
It's okay. I see everyone.
Oh, you're not coming around.
Yeah, occasionally we went to lunch.
I have to look at the name, I have my yearbook, because it is this. And some people work there.
All right, team, let's go ahead and grab some seats. I got my food. I'm content. I'm good.
You already ate all that?
Like,
Yeah.
he's the same when he was in high school.
I did.
I don't know, I saw his baseball picture, he like first that, yes, he.
Telling you, you guys are missing out. Panda Express, baby. You never go wrong with Panda. All right, team, let's go ahead and continue. So any questions so far? Good information, right? Lots of good information. All right, so section M is in Mary, time of possession. Upon notice of recording, now the time shows as 6 p.m. So it's defaulted at 6 p.m. And you can modify that and ask the seller, hey, we want to close, if we can get it closed, say in the morning, you know, we want to record in the morning. So that gives the escrow officer an indication that based on the offer, and if it's signed by the seller and agreed, then their job and goal is to close and record in the morning. If you leave it blank, then it's really the the escrow's decision on how soon they can get that recorded, either in the morning or afternoon. But if you emphasize that, then the escrow officer, as a third party, neutral party, must abide by the agreement of the buyer and the seller if it has a specific time frame. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Close of seller occupied or vacant units, M2, COE date, or if checked below, days after. So I love this form right here because it really gives you a understanding of what your responsibility when representing a buyer is. The buyer and is the seller's intention to stay in the property 29 days or sooner, or 30 days or later. And this is where the form SIP and the RLAS form come into play. So form SIP attached if 29 or fewer days, or form RLAS attached if it's going to be more than 30 days. What are we seeing right now out in the marketplace? We're seeing a lot of seller in possessions after close of escrow, right? They're trying to allow the seller some time to identify, find, and concurrently, or at least close on their property, pull the proceeds, and still have enough time to navigate their next purchase. So we've seen throughout the year seller in possession transactions where the buyer is giving the seller a license to stay after the fact, after close of escrow. Okay. Now the question here is how much time? Is it going to be free, meaning that the seller is going to stay in possession without cost, or is it going to be at a cost? And that's a factor between the buyer and the seller, whatever agreement. Traditionally, we used to do them, and it was based on the PITI, right? Principal, interest, tax, and insurance. Did I say that right? Principal, interest, tax, and yeah. But now, to get their offers considered, we will make the offer allow the seller to stay in possession with no cost, no cost. And the reason they're doing it is to entice the seller the opportunity to not stress about closing, finding and identifying another property, and it gives them the time to relieve some of that pressure when it's a 30-day escrow, right? Because before you know it, 30 days happens and it's like, oh my gosh, the owners are still in the property or have not been able to find a property, and this can delay the process of closing, and that delays what? Also our commissions as well. Okay. Any questions regarding SIPs and RLAs? Tenant in possession. If the property is, and you're aware that it is occupied by a tenant, then the TOPA form must be included as part of this, which is the tenant occupant property addendum. Okay. If this is a property that's a single family residence, but it's tenant occupied, the sellers are investors, and they have this as an investment property, and the intention and intent is that the tenant will stay in possession, then we must disclose that as well, or the seller must disclose that. But as our position in submitting the offer, you know, for the sake of the loan, we have to know what the position is. Is the tenant occupying the property? But even so, if they are, and their intention is to vacate the property at close of escrow, you know, we still need to check this off if there's a tenant in place. Documents and compliance and times to perform. So I love this again. Section Section N as in Nancy, 1, 2, 3, 4 talks about seller delivery of documents. So as always, you know, the seller at time of acceptance, all right. So if the executed agreement is today, both buyer and seller agree to the terms, and even with counter offers, is today considered 1 of 7 days? The answer is no. Okay, again, it goes back to 0 days as of today. Tomorrow starts our 7-day period. So tomorrow would be considered 1 of 7. So 7 days is what the seller has to provide the buyer with all documents, disclosures, right? Section N2, sign and return escrow hold general provision and supplementary instructions. Okay, that says 5 days after receipt, time to pay fees for order of HOA. Okay, very clear, folks, and these are all added information to the purchase agreement. So just as much as a seller can send a notice to perform, the buyer also has those rights to send out to the seller a notice to seller to perform. If they don't abide by these agreements, that is the exit that the buyer has to allow the buyer an exit or cancellation if need be by pressing the seller to do what they need to do. And if they don't, then these are the documents that help you achieve that position. Install smoke alarms and detectors, water heater bracing, 7 days. Okay, I think that's still in the original purchase agreement, but again, it just defines that approach. All right, let's continue part 3 of the RPA. All right, some good stuff. Items included and excluded, no difference than what we currently have. But now the items included, all items specified in paragraph 9 are included in the following. Okay, so this gives the buyer the opportunity to say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we want the stove, we want the refrigerator, we want that wine refrigerator. Hey, they put that in there. For all you winos out there, hey, this will give you the opportunity to ask. And most of these are already attached to the property. Usually, if the kitchen is customized, they usually have a wine refrigerator. But just to define and put things into clarity, all you're saying is the buyer is requesting that as part of the agreement. Okay. Washer and dryer, dishwasher, microwave. Now, you know, common sense, right? Common sense says that most of the stuff, appliances usually stay. But instead of at the end of this dealing with the back and forth and the confusion, be proactive and put it in writing, folks. That'll clear up any issues at the end when the buyer and the seller are feuding, disputing. Well, we didn't agree to leave this. We didn't agree to that. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, yes, we did. We sign off on the RPA, which you have a copy, sign and execute it, agreeing that the items that we've requested to stay with the property. Okay, so that puts us in this position. Additional items, you can add additional items. Video doorbells. What are those doorbell rings, right? The rings. Okay, so very popular right now with properties. It's these video doorbell rings. So is that staying with the property or not? All you're doing is just putting clarity. That's it. Security cameras. Okay, I installed the security cameras to my property. I don't know, maybe I'll leave them, maybe I'll decide to remove them. But you know, at least I have that option. The buyer may request them, And I might throw them as an incentive, but if they don't put them on there and check it out, then I have the right, again, I have the right as a seller to remove those from the property, okay? Any questions on P1? Items on P2, anything excluded items, okay? Allocation of cost, all right? This is similar to what we saw on page 2 of the current RPA, goes through all the motions, but what I like about it, it really is concise and right into details. Your natural hazard zone disclosures, including tax information, who is to pay what, okay? Now, yes, we're gonna get a lot of questions. A lot of people are gonna be like, I don't know how this works. I don't know how that works regarding the RPA. Believe me, when we had a big change to the RPA back in 2014 or 15, there was a lot of questions because before what the RPA used to have was the termite was incorporated into what was called the WPA form. And that was removed and now utilized as part of the request for repairs. So I remember having tons of questions and a lot of our agents asking, you know, and it was very confusing. Even when I took the curriculum at the South Bay Association of Realtor and the attorney was conducting it, it still wasn't clear to me. Even the termite company was trying to get some clarity. It's like, hey, you know, we're going to lose business now because it was always embedded into the RPA. So we're going to get a lot of questions regarding the RPA as well, because unclear or just not a good understanding on how these verbiage are included here. All right, so section Q1 all the way to Q18 talks about the NHD smoke alarm detectors, who is responsible, government requirements, similar to what we have right now, but now it's just into these grids. Government point of sale, escrow fee, who's going to be paying what? Okay, what if they add each to pay their own fees? How about that? We've always written that down. Now they included that as part of the agreement. So there is no question whatsoever in who pays for what. Now, obviously, we're going to check off on Q7 each to pay their own fees. We used to usually write that down as part of it. And then on the far right, who is the escrow holder? You know, I won't be surprised if they're going to add, you know, seller's choice of service, you know, down the line, because that's what we usually write, right? Seller's choice of service. Now, a little tidbit, and it may work and it may not work. You may say escrow to be or seller's choice of service. What you're doing is letting the seller and the listing agent know, hey, we prefer this escrow company, but if they don't, you know, we're okay with the seller's choice of service. But I'm at least throwing that at them and hope that I get maybe an escrow or the title, okay? Because we want to control everything, right? Owner's title insurance policy, buyer lender's title insurance, county tax and transfer fees, city transfer tax fees, HOA fees. Again, who is responsible? Unless otherwise agreed, seller shall pay for separate HOA move out fees, and buyer shall pay for separate move in fees. Applies if separately billed or itemized with costs and transfer fees. Private transfer fees, home warranty. Okay, so again, most of the stuff that is currently with our RPA is now put into these grids to have a little bit more clarity, and everything is right there for you. And then obviously any other terms. Any questions regarding page 3? Yes, sir.
Are those lines we can say like if applicable?
Yes. Yes, you can.
Or for the fees, I'm sorry.
That's what I do.
Yeah, you can definitely, if it's something that is not part of the agreement, you can leave it blank.
Right.
But if it's part of the agreement or something that the buyer is requesting, then you would add it or check it off.
Yeah, And if we don't know, sometimes we'll just put like, if applicable on the
If
price.
applicable, yeah, you can put that as well. Because I do that as well, or I'll put in a, not part of this agreement. Okay. All right, let's continue now to page 4 of the RPA. And I think this is the last, yeah, I think this was the last of really the biggest changes to the RPA. So property addendums and advisories, property type and addendum. So here it explains, what type of offer you're submitting. Is it a probate agreement? Is it a manufacturer agreement? Is it a tenant occupied property addendum included? Tenancy and common purchase addendum? A stock cooperative purchase addendum? So if it applies, then you would check it off. It does not apply, and it's a traditional single, duplex, triplex, or fourplex. Other addendums, if you're including any additional addendums, then you would check off the addendum and attach the addendum to this agreement. Now, again, pretty self-explanatory. Backup offer addendum. If your offer is subject to a backup, you're going to check that off. If it's a property with a septic tank, obviously short sales. We haven't seen short sales in quite some time. Court confirmation, buyer intends to exchange, which is now your 1031. Your 1031 exchange. The forms have been changed, and now they're called BXA or SXA. BXA means buyer, and SXA means seller if they're doing a 1031 exchange. Any questions regarding other addendums? Buyer and seller advisory, pretty self-explanatory. The offer is already checked off as the buyer inspection advisor, the BIA, wire fraud, which is really part of the agreement now, fair housing discrimination advisory, and then the new California Consumer Privacy Act already marked up as permanent. So when you populate the purchase agreement, it's going to populate these 4 agreements already in place. Now, the buyer has the right to add additional forms, which is the wildfire disaster or the statewide buyer, but usually that's part of the seller's disclosure, but you can add it as a protection and an understanding what the buyer's rights and duties are. All right, so the initial deposit, buyer shall deliver deposit directly to escrow if a method other than wire transfer is specified in paragraph 3D1 and such method is unacceptable. Escrow holder, then upon notice from escrow holder, deliver shall be wire transfer, okay? So it's interesting in how they included this information. Again, I'm going to tell you that there's going to be a lot of questions. There's going to be a lot of modification as we progress through this new RPA. But it's also, they're going to say, well, where's this? Where is that? This is why it's very important, folks, that you start really looking at this document on a regular basis. Before it comes up, it's it. This is going to be your new RPA. It's not going to be the one from the past. This will be the one, okay? So this is why we are preparing you to get a good understanding and in a position to really submit these offers with the understanding of what the buyer and the seller's responsibility is. Increased deposit. So everything that was on the grid, remember the first 4 pages of the form is the grid. Now it just defines what these entail. Your additional deposit, increased deposit, retention of deposit. I like this new segue that was added, which is retention of deposit. If you see right here, it says paragraph 29, if initialed by all parties or otherwise incorporated into this agreement, specifies a remedy for buyer defaults. Buyer and seller are advised to consult with a qualified California real estate attorney before any other clause specified as remedy, such as release or forfeit of deposit or making a deposit non-refundable. For failure of buyer, oops. Sorry, guys, it's connecting on my end. Hi, can you still hear me? Yeah. Hi there. Sorry, we're having a little bit of technical issues here. For some reason, it's trying to connect on my computer.
We can hear you, Simon.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, my computer, for some reason, my laptop just went complete. Hold on one second. Let me see if I can get you back on here. Don't you just love technology?
Great when it works.
It's great when it works, but it can be disastrous if it doesn't. Oh, boy. Bear with me, team. I don't know what is going on. Anyone having any internet issues?
Yes, I have no bars.
Yeah, something's weird. Team, let's take a 2-3 minute break real quick, guys. Take a little break while I try to fix this. It's telling me that it's not connecting to the internet. So let's take a quick 2-minute break, and then as soon as I get this up and running, we'll continue. My sincere apologies.
Our internet's okay, but we're not wired. Oh, no, we're wired.
It says there's no internet.
On your laptop or the computer?
Oh, shoot, on my laptop.
Oh, wow.
I'm getting internet in here, so
Are
you
you?
might have to restart.
Are you
your
wireless
computer.
or are you
Wireless. It's not picking up the Zoom, my Zoom account. As soon as I can pick it up, we should be okay to navigate this, but there's a delay and it says no internet.
wired to Ethernet?
All right, team, I think we're up and running, so just bear with me while I get back into it. Hi.
Are you good?
Yeah, now I have my laptop for some reason disconnected. So
Okay,
it looks like I just had to reboot my computer.
okay.
I think that helped. Thank you.
Do you need water?
I got
Okay.
All right, team, it looks like we're back up and running. So thank you. Sorry for the technical issues, but I believe we should be good to go. Let's, yes, it's in there.
Oh, that's right, 14 pages. There it is.
Okay, why is that doing that? Okay. All right. We're back in action. All right. Can you see the RPA, folks?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, let's go ahead and continue. We left off on additional deposits and then the retention. So such as release of forfeit of deposit, making the deposit non-refundable, failure of buyer to complete the purchase, any such clause shall be deemed invalid unless the clause adequately satisfy the statutory liquidated damage requirements set forth in the civil code. Now, what it says on here and the purpose that they've utilized this retention of deposit is to put clarity in position that the listing agent cannot just unilaterally put that the money will be forfeited. Now, we do see this a lot on commercial, but on residential, it is forbidden to do so. And if you are doing so, you're doing it against the broker's advice. We never recommend that a buyer forfeit their position, right, as releasing contingencies. But even as an avenue, we'll accept your offer as long as you forfeit the entire deposit. Now, here's the thing, and I want to make sure that everyone is on the same page. As I mentioned earlier, the contract is the contract black and white, and also the spirit of the contract, meaning there's some bend to it. But when you put that you are forfeiting the deposit and the deposit to be immediately released to the seller, then there's no recourse. There's no avenue for mediation, no avenue for arbitration, and no avenue for really to protect the buyer's interest, which is their deposit. So if the buyer understands and acknowledges, then they're in risk if they do not perform or proceed with the purchase of the home. And therefore, that may cause them to lose their deposit. So this is the reason this retention deposit provision was added to the RPA. And that squeaky noise is my table, guys. Okay, there's no mouse around here. Okay. At first I thought, where's that mouse at? Keep hearing them squealing away.
Sounds like my puppy when he wants.
Yeah, right. All right, an all cash offer. That's again going back to the original 3A. If it's an all cash offer, which again, cash is king, right? If they're going to be submitting a cash offer, then they're going to check off on the first page of the RPA that it is an all cash offer. And all this is just a reinforcement, folks. Okay, it reinforces the agreement. And then it goes to the motions again of the first loan, additional finance, buyer loan status, FHAs, balance of purchase price, down payment, including any cash funds to be deposited within escrow. Okay, verification of down payment, as we explained from the very beginning of the RPA, all the grids, right? The grids of the form is now reinforcing by the language of what the specifics of the terms and agreements of the RPA. Buyer stated financing, closing and possession. We explained, the avenue and acceptance And then I like this verbiage, which is with our current agreement, but it has here where it says buyer is strongly advised to conduct investigations of the entire property in order to determine its present condition. Seller and agents may not be aware of all defects affecting the property or the factors that the buyer considers important. Property improvements may not be built according to code in compliance with current law or have any all requirement permits issued or any what do you call it? Any permits finalized. So it really defines the position of what the buyer is getting to in purchasing. Remember, at the end of the day, all property are sold in its as-is condition, meaning that it's not a new construction, and even new constructions also have issues. I've seen houses that are built that are worse than a home built in the 50s and 60s. And I'm being very sincere about that because I've seen it. I've seen some defects on brand new constructions that homes that have been, and the test of times, right? Look at it of everything that we've gone through, you know, homes that were built in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, earthquakes, weather, sun, and have been able to handle all this. And then homes that are just built, they're already starting to leak because they did not do a great craftsmanship on the property. They built them too quick. They didn't go into details like a lot of our craftsman homes or homes, you know, 40, 50 years ago. It's like vehicles too, right? Have you noticed that? You know, older vehicles, you know, in your 30s, your 40s, solid, all muscle, you know, all engine. But nowadays, vehicles are made out of paper. You blow on it and it falls apart. Where, you know, vehicles from the 60s and 70s, raw, you know, all engine, but no wires and no computers, you know, just the difference in time. So take that into consideration as well. Seller remaining in possession after close of escrow, we talked about that again, and pursuant to that, you know, the SIP form, which explains and details, you know, the understanding and the approach if the seller is given a license to stay after close of escrow. And it is just a license to stay, and the SIP clearly stipulates that it's a license, okay? It's like a hotel, okay? A hotel. So this is the reason you don't want to do like a lease agreement, because now the seller, who is technically speaking a tenant, can use that as an arsenal right now with the pandemic. Well, I have a lease agreement in place. This is why we avoid, you know, any type of RLAS forms. And if you heard Dennis Block a couple of weeks back talking about it, he emphasizes the importance not to put anything as a rental month-to-month or lease agreement. Okay, because now they can use that as an arsenal and say, look, I was under the impression I was being a tenant now, and now they can use that to prolong the stay of their time in the property. So just keep that in the back of your mind, because it's so delicate right now, what we're seeing right now, and everyone is using, you know, COVID and the eviction moratorium as an avenue to prolong and stay longer. Okay, so just be very, very cautious on that, and always ask your broker or the legal team. Contingencies and removal of contingencies. Again, I'm not going to go too much into details on it, but the agreement is, unless otherwise specified, contingents upon buyer obtaining loans. So just no difference, folks, than your loan, your physical inspections, your seller disclosures, your HOAs. All those are considered contingencies. But also, you know, if you look at section 8A3, buyer contractual obligation regarding deposit balances of down payment and closing costs are not contingent of this agreement unless otherwise agreed upon. Everything that we do, guys, has to be agreed upon by mutual understanding from a buyer and a seller, okay? If there's no meeting of the mind, then you don't have an agreement, Okay, this is the reason we play back and forth tennis, right? Until we come to an agreement. The agreement that that satisfies the seller and the agreement that satisfies the buyer. Once we have an agreement, then that's when it's a binding agreement, and now it can hold water. And now whoever breaches the contract, now they can go after for damages. No loan contingency, appraisal, no appraisal contingency, and investigation of property. Again, going through the same motions, that the buyer has the right, under the agreement to release contingencies, but also they have the right to hold on to the contingency and ask for extension as well. So remember, in any position that you're in, representing a seller, representing a buyer, if the buyer needs to exercise an extension of time to release a contingency, you want to be proactive and engage those conversations immediately with the listing agent. So that way the listing agent is aware they can either grant you the extension or otherwise not grant you the extension. Now, what's so important is the dialogue and the conversations, okay, the connections. Build good relationships with the agent. That way, if you do need a little bit of a break or an extension to release, you have that because you got great rapport with the agent. So for me and for a lot of your top performers, they know how to build those relationships in order that if they need extra time, the buyer needs extra time, or even the seller. You don't want to be that agent, folks, that you have not a good conversation aspect from the very beginning. You're going through the motions and closing the deal, but when it comes to you're going to piss someone off, they may not want to grant you that extension, and it makes it very difficult. Now you have the burden either to cancel or possibly release that as a condition. And if you're not 100%, meaning your buyer is not 100% approved, then I would caution you to release that. Then you got to let the buyer make that decision and how they want to approach that point. Condominiums, buyer review of leases. Again, these are like for solar panels. Again, similar to what we saw on our current RPA. Removal of waiver of contingencies with offer, a lot of the same characteristics as we mentioned early on the purchase agreement. It just defines and it reinforces that agreement. Removal of contingency or cancellation, okay? For contingency for review of seller's documents and contingency for condom plan development, buyer shall within the time specified on paragraph 3L. Remember, there was A section, B section, C section, D section, and so on and so forth. These were the grids, and you can always refer back to that grid. See, it says paragraph 3L, and you refer back, and that's where it's going to tell you exactly what the buyer intentions were at that point. Okay. Sale of buyer's property, again, going back to the COP, which we defined, and it says you can find that on paragraph 3L8. Okay. Yes, it may sound a little bit confusing right now, but there's reference points to this new agreement, folks, that you can reference back to it. Note to buyer and seller regarding included or excluded from the sale. What is staying, what is not staying? And it goes through all the jargon, from section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. They have added the security systems as part of it. You see where it's red on paragraph 5, non-dedicated devices that check paragraph 3P, all smart home and security systems. Okay, so that was added to it. Lease and lease items excluded from the sale. Okay, we're going to jump onto page 7 now. Allocation of cost and inspection report and certificate. So the majority of the stuff here is similar to what we currently have on our purchase agreement. Now, there is certain things that were added to it, which is the government requirements and corrective remedy action. Legally required installation and property improvements. Any required installations of smoke alarms or carbon monoxide devices or security of water heater shall be compliance with the time specified in paragraph 3N as in Nancy 4. If the buyer is to pay for these items, buyer as instructed by escrow holder shall deposit funds into escrow or directly to the vendor completing the repairs or installation prior to close of escrow. Seller shall deliver to buyer a written statement of compliance in accordance with the laws unless seller is exempt. Who is exempt? Usually trusts are exempt from it. Okay, people that have passed away and can no longer disclose material facts regarding the property, and individuals that have very limited information regarding the property are exempt from, providing this. Point of sale requirements. Point of sale inspections, reports, and repairs refer to any such actions required by completing before and after close of escrow. They are required in order to close under the law unless parties otherwise agree. And you notice that it always refers to parties. And when they say parties, they're saying principals, the buyers and the sellers regarding the parties. That's what they're referring to. Okay. Buyer agrees to pay for any portion of such repairs. Buyer shall directly pay to the vendor, complete the repairs, and provide the invoice to escrow, deposit funds into escrow sufficient to pay the buyer's portion of such repairs and request escrow holder. So now what it's really emphasizing is, in the past, we've had situations where seller did not want to do any type of repairs. And you go through the motions and the buyer is in a very volatile situation because maybe it's a condition of the lender. And now you're like going back and forth, are we going to end up canceling, but the buyer really truly wants this property. Now what this defines on the point of sale requirements is that the buyer has also the right and duties to pay for some of the costs to bring the property up to compliance or satisfy the underwriter. Now, in the past, we never would see that, but now as part of this agreement, the point of sale requirements is that if it is a requirement from underwriter or a condition, then either or can satisfy that, the buyer or the seller. Okay, so that's what it says. The reinspection fee, if any repairs, paragraph 10B1 is not completed with the time specified in the lender's requirements. In addition, inspections to be made, seller shall be responsible for any corresponding reinspection fees. If buyer incurs costs to comply with lender requirements concerning this item, seller shall be responsible for those costs. Okay, so again, there's going to be a lot of jabs into this RPA that you have to understand who is responsible, who is not responsible, and then who is obligated to take care of some of these costs if someone is going through the motions of it. And this is where the reinspection fee comes into play. Home warranties, statutory disclosures. This is a long list, which is currently with the current disclosure, talks about death in the property. It talks about the SPQ, the transfer disclosure, the TDS. It talks about, any new disclosures that are brought upon to the buyer. For example, you're in escrow. Buyer receives all seller disclosures, right? All disclosures regarding the property. Any material facts about the property. Now, it also says here that if a statutory supplement disclosure or sequential amendment statutory supplement disclosure is delivered to the buyer after the offer is signed, buyer shall have the right to terminate this agreement within 3 days. Meaning that, remember, the buyer has their due diligence, right? 17 days to release these contingencies. But let's say that it's the 18th, 19th day and they receive an additional new disclosure that was never brought to the buyer. What the contract says is that the buyer has 3 additional days to terminate this agreement if the buyer is not completely satisfied. Now, it goes back to the question, what if the buyer releases all contingencies? Okay, buyer releases all contingencies, and then at the end receives this new notification. Okay, well, who supersedes what? Okay, and the answer is the buyer's responsibility when they release all contingencies. Unfortunately, the responsibility falls on the buyer. So even if the buyer receives new material facts about the property, guess what? It's not an argument that the buyer has the right to cancel. This is why we highly recommend that the buyer not to release contingencies, because that now exposes the buyer's deposit. Well, Simon, how can that be? This is new material, fact about the property. I get it, but the buyer also has the right to do their inspections. Get all the inspections done, general inspection, plumbing inspection, foundation, electrical, any and all inspections regarding the overall integrity of the property. And this is the reason you protect your client if the buyer is not completely satisfied with the overall condition of it. That's why you have these layer of walls. But once you release these walls, folks, that's it. You're telling the seller and you're telling the listing agent, I acknowledge and I understand what I'm doing. And a seller and a listing agent can come back and say, well, you know that you released this from the very beginning. We never told you, we didn't put a gun to you and say, hey, you got to release this. But that was the buyer's choice and right to do so. Now you pay the consequences if the property is in bad condition. Now, with that being said, I want to be crystal clear that even if the buyer does release any and all contingency, folks, okay, the buyer may still have some damages. And this is where we step back and let them argue with it. Because remember, black and white and the spirit of the contracts, right? The ban of it. Because how many times have you been speeding, right? You're going 100 miles or 120 like I do, and they pull you over. You know you were speeding, right? You know you were going more than 65 miles an hour on the freeway. But the police officer has the right to determine if they are going to write you a citation or not. Now, if you're a jerk, they're gonna maximize that and give it to you. But if you're polite and respectful, they may say, you know what, I'll give you a warning. This is the only warning. I catch you again. And that happened to me. I was going extremely fast and I got pulled over by highway patrol. I was on the 91 freeway coming into the office, and I was zooming in here and I did about 92, 93 miles an hour. So all of a sudden I see this motorcycle cop light me up. It's like, oh no. I rolled down I parked safely. I actually got off the freeway. I didn't even bother to stay in the freeway, okay? One of the recommendations that I've seen, and this is just my personal belief, if you do get whatchamacallit, if you are getting pulled over in the freeway, the best thing for any of you is to exit the freeway. Do not stop in the freeway. Do not stop in the freeway. Even though you may have the space, you got a lot of people that are distracted and a lot of people that are not paying attention. And, you know, it just takes that one accident to alter all of us. I'm just throwing that at you. Just get out. Even if the officer says, pull over, the next exit, if it's a mile, you exit and you get off. It's just better to do that. Anyways, so I got pulled over. I rolled down my window. And the first thing he says is, do you know how fast you were going? And guess what I said? No. I said, yeah, I know exactly. Come on, guys. You're gonna be going 90 miles an hour. You're gonna tell me you don't know you were going that fast. What did I just finish telling you? Be honest, right?
Keep tapping on the speedometer. It's like there must be something wrong with
Damn, speedometer is not working.
it. It worked.
But it's digital now, so you can.
So I told the officer, yes, I'm aware that I was going over the speed limit. I never incriminated myself. I'm just putting that out there. I never said, yeah, I was going 90 miles an hour. But I did say that I was, going over the speed. That's all I said.
Your wife's the neighbor.
I've used that once at work too, by the way. So he asked for license of registration. And for the longest time, I had what's called on my license and then on my license plate, I had that it was registered by the County of Los Angeles. So as soon as they would pull up my license or my license plate, it said it was registered by the county. So immediately it would say who it was registered, whatever agency. So he comes back and he says, so you work for the county? I go, yes, sir, I do. He goes, I should give you a citation. And I said, I agree. I agree with you. And I asked the officer, which again, highway patrol officers are notorious. I don't know what it is, if they have something against the county sheriffs, who knows? But I was very polite and I didn't want to piss them off. And I says, what would you do if the tables were turned? And he chuckles and he laughs. He goes, well, I would hope that you would give me a warning. I says, okay. Then he looked at me and he goes, well, you know what? You were going, over the excessive speed limit. I'm going to have to write you up. I says, well, I understand. Do what you got to do, officer. So he goes back to his motorcycle and he waits and waits and just keeps me waiting for a while. He comes back to me and says, look, I'm going to give you a question. And if you answer this question, I may just let you go. And I was like ecstatic. I says, okay. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, maybe I'm not going to get a citation if I answer the question right. And then he says to me, all right, what is the answer to this question? He says, roll down the window down more, because I had it like halfway. So I rolled it all the way down. He goes, which is the best agency out there? He literally said that to me, who is the best agency? And I was like, no, he didn't. No, he didn't. And in my heart, I wanted to say the LA County Sheriff's, baby. But then I thought, well, should I go in that direction and piss him off? And then he writes me a ticket. Now I have to deal with explaining that to the watch commander and saying, yeah, I got a speeding ticket for being foolish and going in excess speed. So I said to him, well, the best agency out there are all peace officers that are there to protect and serve.
Whoa.
He goes, darn it, that's a good answer. I'll let you go. Have a nice and please, watch your speed. And he let me go. So I didn't have to give in to his stupid, the California Highway Patrol did. Oh, crap. I had to throw that little jab on you guys. All right, let's continue. All right, I know we're pressed for time. We got one more hour. We're almost to the home stretch, guys, okay? So it's a lot. Now, one other thing that I want to also mention, the South Bay Association and most of your associations are also providing you with the class as well. I am not sure if the association is charging to do it.
$15.
What? $15?
$15.
$10. I'm doing it at a discount, guys. And for you on Zoom, $5 for you. I'll send you my PayPal or whatever it's called, Zelle or something. Venmo me. Just kidding. But again, the associations are also having the class as well. If you want to, again, take it and hear it from someone else, I highly recommend it as well, because you'll hear it from me and then you'll hear it different from someone else. And you may pick up something different and says, well, you know what, Simon didn't make sense throughout the whole entire time. I'd rather go to a person that knows how to conduct the class. Oh, someone, Sophia says, I took it last week free of charge.
Oh, wow. I did one free of charge. Yeah.
All right.
That's the first one.
Very cool. Debbie just said I'm signed up. Fantastic. Okay. Well, yeah, again, you can definitely take it as many times, because it's a lot of information. Now, the content is the content, and as long as you're going through the motions of it, and the more you see it, the more you're going to get acquainted to it. Okay. So thank you, Sophia. Thank you, Debbie, for sharing. Natural environment hazards, home fire hardening disclosure advisory. These are for homes, in high visibility of fires. This new disclosure of a space, the feasible space disclosure, which is a new form that was added on, I believe, in June of this year. If it's a condominium, withholding of tax, Megan's Law, obviously the website there, meganslaw.ca.gov. If your clients are interested to know if there's any sex offenders in the neighborhood, guess what? There's registered sex offenders everywhere. I've seen sex offenders in high desirable areas such as like Beverly Hills, and people live there, it's just, it is what it is, because you can go as half a mile, 5 mile radius from whatever address that you choose to. So unfortunately, they're out there. So the website there is, if your clients are interested in finding out if the area does have registered sex offenders. Any known material facts regarding 3N1 disclosure known of material facts affecting the property include but not limited to insurance claims. Okay, so in the past 5 years, so that is part of the agreement, folks, that you can ask the seller, is there any insurance claims against the property? What are some of the insurance claims that you may see on a property? Fire, water damage, yeah, some of those electrical,
Flood.
yeah, flood. We one of my properties, I had a water pipe bust, and it's on a slab like this on the floor, and I only knew because I was barefooted, and the floor was cold, and all of a sudden, one section was hot. Like, wait a minute, something doesn't feel right. So that's where the water pipe. So instead of breaking the concrete, I just decided, I think I reached out to you, for plumber advice to repipe the entire house, $7,500 a liter. It's not cheap to repipe the entire house from the main, and then all the sinks and showers and washer and dryer as well. So again, material facts and insurance claims against the property. Again, I'm not going to go deep into the conversations with a lot. We'll spend hours and hours and hours for buyers and sellers protections for entering upon the property. Buyers shall keep the property free and clear of any liens, repairs. Again, if the buyer is doing some type of repairs, that they will not put in any type or make sure to pay the contractors or anyone doing any type of repairs. Remember, the property does not belong to the buyer yet, but if the seller is okay with it, a buyer can come in there and utilize, third-party contractors to come in and do some work. Now, it's very far and few. You very rarely see major stuff. I mean, I would advise and I would say, don't do it. Because if it doesn't go through and the buyer does cancel, oh boy, lawsuit in the making, okay? Title investing, obviously, part of the responsibility, escrow and title to make sure that there is a clear title before transferring of ownership. That's their job, that's their duties. Now, something interesting regarding this paragraph, which is section E is an Edward. If buyer is a legal entity and the property purchase price is at least 300 and the, 1 second. And the purchase price is made without a bank loan or similar form of external financing, a target order GTO issued by the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network or similar form of external finance, the U.S. Department of Treasury requires title companies to collect and report certain information about the buyer, depending on where the property is located. Buyer agrees to cooperate with the title company in efforts to comply with the GTO. Okay, and no, it's not like Grand Theft Auto. It's GTO, not GTA. Okay. Buyer shall, after close of escrow, receive a recorded grant deed or any other conveyance documents required to convey title or for stock or long-term lease and assignments of stock, certificates, or seller leasehold interest, including oil. Now it goes really to like properties up in the northern part, central part of California when you have these type of vestings in here. But again, this is added information that is not part of our current purchase agreement. And it goes into the ALTA and the CLTA, which is your title insurances that protect the buyer. All right, next page, the time period 14AB, which is your physical inspections. To remove contingencies, then the right follow may only be extended, altered, modified, or changed by what? Mutual agreement, removal of contingency or cancel under this paragraph by either the buyer or the seller must exercise in good faith. Now, that's a very good point, folks. Everything that we do on these contracts is in good faith. If the buyer or the seller is doing something without good faith, then either party can articulate their position and say, look, the buyer is not doing this in good faith. They may have some recourse and some avenue for damages to seller. Just because the buyer cancels, there has to be a good reason for it. Okay. Now, let's just go back to releasing contingencies as an example. Well, buyer understands that if they release all contingencies, you're exposing the buyer's deposit, and the buyer decides to cancel. Well, the seller has some recourse, maybe damages, to go after the deposit that is currently in escrow, up to 3%. So I caution you that even so, it's the scale of the weight, who has the most evidence, and whoever has the most evidence will ultimately win if it goes against a mediation, arbitration, and more so when you have attorneys involved, or it even goes into a lawsuit. Okay. And I've seen this back and forth. It's time consuming, it's frustrating, it's sometimes very stressful, but you've got to understand your role as a professional. Are you guiding your clients in the right direction? Or if you're uncertain, then stop, analyze, and then seek advice, either from your broker or your legal team as well. Okay, we're here as resources. All right, we don't want you or your clients to do something that jeopardizes either party, because I've seen it from both sides of the table. Buyers pissed off, sellers pissed off, and it's a cat and fight, back and forth, back and forth. We're in the job of selling homes, not babysitting homes. So let's just do our very best to de-escalate the situation if possible, and nip it immediately before it becomes a forest fire and it's too hard to stop. Now it's a ripple effect, a snowball effect. Now it's going to be even hard for the broker to help and navigate that for you. You know, this is where you have to be proactive and be engaged in the conversations aspect from the very, very beginning. Buyer review of documents, repair requests. Again, all the mumbo jumbo. Buyer has the right to do any type of, even this, guys. You know, I just want to throw this at you because it's a very important topic. Buyer has the right to ask for some type of request or repairs. Okay, and three things can happen. The seller can come back and say, we'll take care of the repairs. The seller can come back and says, in lieu of the repairs, I will do a credit. Or the seller can come back and say, I'm not going to do the repairs, I'm not going to give you credit, but I'm willing to reduce the price of your home. Or better yet, I'll give you all three options. Okay, meaning that the seller may do some of the repairs, the seller may give some credit, and the seller may be willing to reduce the purchase price. Okay, all three can happen simultaneously, one or one or the other. So I want to make sure that you understand that in your position representing the buyer, you can jab and submit a request. Well, Simon, what if the buyer has released all contingencies, including physical inspection? Okay, well, that's a very good question, right? The answer is you can still request it, because what I said now may be different 2 days from now, a week from now. That's the beauty and the complexity of what we have in real estate contracts, is that even though it seems to go straight ahead, there's going to be alterations as we go. And this is what I want you to understand, that it's not just straightforward. There's curves regarding these contracts. But it's your job and your responsibility to understand the dynamics and the complexity of these contracts to a certain extent. Now, we don't practice law, we don't practice taxation. If you're not a licensed attorney, you do not give any legal rights or legal advice. And if you're talking about taxes, are you licensed? Are you a CPA? Are you an accountant? You have your Series 7 or whatever that series is. If you don't, then do not give any type of advice. Your advice is only real estate related. That's it. Okay. And if the buyer or the seller needs additional information regarding these forms, then we ask them to speak with an attorney. Don't complicate things more. Here's the problem that I see a lot with real estate agents. They want to do everything. They want to handle and feel like they know all about every aspect of this process. It's not your job, folks. You're stressing yourselves so much. Stop. Only do what you need to do. Is put the seller in escrow, and if they are happy and we can get through the deal and close it, that's it. Move on to the next one. Don't put more fuel into that fire, because you're going to get dragged into the dispute and issues, and now it's going to be hard to try to backpedal your way out of it. I hope everyone is crystal clear in that position. Don't make it so complex, folks. It's not necessary. Simplify things and do the right thing all the time, and believe me, you'll have a very successful career. All right. let's continue. I know there was a couple of conversations there. Seller right to cancel. Obviously, the seller has the right to cancel. How does the seller cancel? Well, there's parameters in place. The seller can cancel by sending out a notice to perform. If the seller sends out the buyer to perform and the buyer does not perform, that's the exit for the seller. Remember, at the end of the day, the seller has the right to put the property for sale if they choose to. The seller has the right to determine what the price will be. And that is all agreed upon from the original listing agreement in the listing appointment. Okay. Once you're in contract, the listing agreement doesn't define or say anything about cancellation of the listing. Who do you think has the right to cancel the listing? Okay. Well, the only one that really has the right to cancel is the brokerage, the broker. Now, the seller can articulate their position and say, look, this agent was a bad agent, did not know, did not comprehend, did not follow my directions, and go through those motions and explain the reason why you were not the agent of choice after the fact. And it's up to the brokerage to determine, what direction we go with this. And we have the right to cancel if it's going to be a problem. Well, it's the same thing with a buyer as well, folks. You can terminate your buyers. I hope you know that. You can fire your buyers. And don't think that you're stuck with these buyers if it's just not working for you. And sometimes agents have a hard time understanding and comprehending that. It's like, boy, oh boy, I have to deal with them. No, you don't. Right? We can delegate it to someone else. And I've been in situations where it doesn't work with this agent, but it works fantastic with another agent, and we still are able to pay some type of referral. So I want you to understand the dynamics and also the building blocks of what your approach is and your duties are as a real estate professional. Okay. All right, let's continue. Buyer's right to cancel. So just as much as the seller, the buyer has some rights to cancel. If the seller breaches the contract, the buyer has the right to also send a notice to perform to the seller. Okay, and that can be many levels. If the seller is contingent upon that they have to find a replacement property, they don't find it on a timely manner, the seller could say, look, we're going on 15, 30 days and we can't wait any longer. We need to find and close this deal. Otherwise, we're going to cancel. We can send a notice to the seller to perform. Okay. If the seller is making it very difficult to show the property or unreasonable as well, or we cannot come to an agreement on the request of repairs. The seller receives the request from us, right, on repairs, and the seller comes back and doesn't respond to it or says no to it. Then we have the right to cancel. We don't have to continue with it, okay? Because all property are sold in as is condition. All property are sold in as is condition. Effect of removal of contingencies. Okay. If buyer removes unless otherwise agreed and any contingencies or cancellation rights unless otherwise agreed, buyer shall conclusively be deemed to have one, completed all buyer investigations, all reviews of reports and other applicable information and disclosures pertaining to that contingency of cancellation rights. Elect to proceed with the transaction, assume all liability, responsibilities, and expenses for non-delivery of any reports, disclosures, or information outside of seller's control, and for any repairs or corrections pertaining to the contingency or cancellation rights otherwise agreed, or for the inability to obtain financing. So what it says is very simple. Buyer, be aware. By releasing contingencies, you are exposing your deposit. And if the buyer is fine exposing their deposit, then they know what they're getting themselves into. Now, a lot of us work with first-time buyers, right? First-time purchasing a home. We do a lot of hand-holding for our clients. And the last thing we want not to do is jeopardize our client's deposit, right? And that's scary because, you know, it could be all their hard-earned money. And we're talking $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 in deposit. Who wants to lose $10,000, $15,000? No one. But if you don't understand the dynamics of these contracts, folks, then you're putting your clients in jeopardy. Now, I also want you to understand, and I stress this because I have a passion, is, you know, don't be afraid of these contracts either. Because the contract is the contract, and if the buyer breaches the contract, then the seller has the recourses to cancel, move on to someone else. And if because agents' ignorance and not understanding, then it puts you in a bad position. Now, the awesome part that all of you on this training are phenomenal professionals. You guys are rock stars, okay? But there's a lot of agents, unfortunately, that do not know, do not understand the dynamics and how these contracts work. Remember, it's a tennis, back and forth, back and forth. What's so awesome about all this agreement, it protects the seller, the buyers, the title, the escrows, the inspectors, and also the agents involved and the brokerages. That's why it's 16 pages long now. A lot of information. I'm not saying that in 3 hours you're going to know every element of the forms here. It's impossible. Impossible. And I'm breaking it down as much as I possibly can. As I told you, I disclose this. It is dry material, very boring. And I appreciate you hanging in there. We're almost there, guys. Almost there. But at the end of the day, you must understand some, if not everything, on these forms. Because the more you know, the more ammunition you have, and the better prepared you are. The more eloquent you're going to come across. The more confident you're going to be. And if someone throws a jab, you're going to be able to jab back. And more so, if you understand that position and you anchor yourself, no one can penetrate you because you can go and dive right into the contract. You know how many times, I'm not saying I'm the best of the best when it comes to this dynamics of contracts and being a broker, but I can hold my weight pretty well. And I mean that with a passion and sincerity. I'll go to bat for you guys. And I've done that many, 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 many times, okay? You know, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And sometimes we just don't want to deal with the ugliness of this industry. But I want to make sure that I can help you get some compensation, get you paid. Now we're going to do the right thing all the time. We're not going to take shortcuts. We're not going to do anything unethical. We're not going to do fraud or do something shady, right? Because your license is in jeopardy as well. And I would never jeopardize my license, nor your license as well. This is why I just want to keep this very open and very transparent in our approach. Okay? Because at the end of the day, I want you to have a license for the rest of your life if you want it. I'm going 25 years. 95 years. Holy crap. I'm old. But I plan to keep it for another 25 years. See if I can last 50 years in this industry or then some. Because I love what I do. It's fun. It's exciting. I love the chase of the deal. And I know how lucrative this real estate career can really provide you. It's provided me pretty well with the family, and you know, it can do the same for you as well. So, you know, I commend you for hanging in here and really just getting an understanding and a grasp of the new RPA. Okay. But don't let this stop you. Continue educating yourself and continue taking classes. Okay, that was my 2-minute pitch. All right, no one is laughing anymore. Maybe we need to take a little break.
No.
No? Okay. All right. We're almost done. Demand to close of escrow. All right, so the demand to close of escrow is 72 hours, better known as 3 days. So the buyer or the seller can do and send out the demand, better known as the DCE form. Okay, what is the DCE form? Is the demand to close escrow. When do you submit a DCE form? At time of escrow. If you are putting 30 days or you're putting a specific date, let's say that November 30th is the close of escrow, and that day is upon us today, and the deal does not look like it's closing from either or party, meaning the buyer or the seller, then you send out the DCE form. Okay, and that starts the time to cancel. Now, I caution you, okay? I caution you that if you are going to use the DCE form, that you're prepared to cancel if the buyer or the seller does not perform. And if you are not planning to cancel, then you must put something in writing extending the DCE form for a later date. For example, mostly the DCE is sent out to the buyer's agent. You're the listing agent, you submit, we were supposed to close today, which is today, November 5th, okay? And the buyer's agent and the buyer says, look, I don't know when we're gonna close. I don't have a set date. Well, shame on you. Shame on you for not being proactive, shame on you for not being diligent, and shame on you for not being aggressive and getting the necessary information needed. The reason I say that is because it is your fiduciary responsibility, meaning the agents involved, to provide us with updates. Someone that comes to us and says, well, I don't know, then you better get some answers ASAP. And if they're not doing it, gosh, you better be on it, like your life depends on it. Because your sellers are relying on your position. You don't want this deal to fall apart, because what's going to happen if the deal cancels at the last minute when you're about to close, okay, the sellers can get a bad taste in their mouth and say, look, I wish you would have been more upfront of what's going on with the buyer and the buyer's agent. I just felt a lack of communication. That's not a good position. Instead, rolling up your sleeves and saying, look, you know, last week we got notification that the buyer underwriter conditions are, they got a lien on a child support that they have to pay. Now you're proactively engaged and understand where the buyer stands. Now we know, do we need to extend a few weeks, or is this going to be unrealistic? And this is where now you're working towards the same goal. The agent representing the buyer, you representing the seller, you're working together in unity to work and close the deal. But if there's lack of communication, guess what? You're going to have a problem. The deal's going to fall apart. You may lose that listing. And I've seen it firsthand, folks. So that demand is of importance, but it puts the buyer or the seller in check. And after the 72 hours comes and the buyer has not performed, or the seller, then either or has the right to cancel. Guess what also? If the buyer has released all contingencies, and on the 5th, today was the 30-day escrow, right? And the buyer released everything, but the seller now drags their feet. The buyer sends the DCE form, the demand to close, and guess what? The buyer has the right after 72 hours to cancel and retain all their deposit back. Okay, because who breached the contract? The seller. The seller. All right, so the demand is 3 days. Effective cancellation Again, it goes into the mumbo jumbo is if any of the parties, and it says right here, a release of funds will require mutual signed release instructions from the parties, a judicial decision or arbitration award. A party may be subject to a civil penalty up to $1,000 for refusing to sign the cancellation instruction if there is no good faith dispute exists as to which parties are entitled to the deposit funds, Civil Code Section 1057.3. Otherwise, what it says is that if there is no good reason why the other party is not releasing the cancellation, they're just pissed off. I'm not going to sign off on the buyer's cancellation because I'm pissed that the buyer did not close with me. I'm going to go after the buyer's deposit. That's not a good reason. And ultimately, the buyer can go and sue the seller and get awarded damages. On top of getting their money released, their deposit, but also they're entitled to civil damages up to $1,000, folks. Okay. Repairs. Again, going through the motions, the buyer has the right to submit a repair request. Sorry, I've got a little tongue tied there. But even after the buyer releases all contingencies, they can still try to make an attempt to release or put together a request of repairs. Final verification of contingency. Again, that was part of the first or second page of the RPA. Buyer has 5 days prior to close of escrow to do a final walkthrough of the property. It is not contingent upon the sale. So that's what it says, it reinforces. Prorated of property tax and other items, basically what it's saying to both the buyer and the seller, that depending on when it closes, there may be prorations of taxes. If it closes on the 15th, then the seller is responsible for the first 15. And then the buyer is responsible for the end of the 15 days of the 30 days. That's what it means. Broker and agents compensation. So seller and buyer or both agree to pay a compensation to the broker. Now, can anyone pay you a commission? The answer is yes. Okay, the buyer can pay you a commission as much as the seller can pay you a commission. Well, wait a minute, Simon. I didn't know that the buyer can pay me a commission. That's right. The buyer can pay you a commission if you do it the right way. And I've done this many times where I'll go in, submit an offer, and the listing agent is only paying me 2%, and I ask for a 3%, and I send over the COP. Yeah, COP. No, not the COP, CBC form, and the listing agent comes back and says, look, unfortunately, it's only 2%. I'm getting a total of 4%, but I have a buyer representation agreement. I can get the difference from the buyer. So the seller will pay me my 2%, and the buyer can pay me 1%. Well, how is the buyer going to pay you? Through escrow. When they turn in their initial down payment and closing costs, escrow will also calculate, the amount that the buyer would have to come in to pay you your compensation. Now, it's very far and few that happens, and usually we'll just accept what the seller is willing to give us. But at the end of the day, you're entitled to a full commission if you play it right. And I've done that many times in the past, where I've represented the seller and I represented the buyer, and I say, seller, you're going to give me a discount. The seller, let me rephrase it. I've been in the situation where I represented the seller, and then on the listing agreement, I would put, if I represent the buyer, I would discount my commission. Okay. And I would discount it 1% for a total of 5 instead of 6. And the seller signed off on it. Then I go to the buyer and they, submit an offer, and I have the buyer representation agreement, and I say, well, I discounted my commission to make your offer work, and I lost a 1%. So I'll ask the buyer to pay me a commission. So that's the dynamics that, you know, you can utilize as an effort and as a position to get compensated, folks, okay? It's very far and few, as I mentioned, not too much practice on that, but can you get both parties to pay? And the answer is yes, you can. Joint escrow instructions and escrow holders, basically it goes through all the motions of all the paragraphs, the very beginning of the grid, indicating, you know, your role in your position. B, C, D, E, F, G goes into, you know, the escrow and what escrow's responsibility and what the role and intentions are. And then obviously what informations that the escrow needs, such as information from HOA, information of vesting, FERPTA, you know, if it's a seller that's selling a property and they're foreign, you know, that we may withhold some taxes. It goes through all those motions, HOA and all that good stuff. Selection of service and providers. Agents do not guarantee the performance of any vendor, service, or product providers, whether referred by an agent or selected by a buyer, seller, or any persons. Buyer, seller may select any providers on their own choice. Again, just another disclosure and disclaimer. Multiple listing service. Agents are authorized to report to the MLS that an offer has been accepted. So what it says, and you know, the stuff that's in red talks about the internet portals or both, and it goes into the civil section of the section of 1088 requires that the MLS to maintain such images and information for at least 3 years, and as a result, they may be displayed or circulated on the internet, which cannot be controlled or removed by the seller or agent. Or 3, sellers, agents, buyer agents, and MLS have no obligation or ability to remove such images or information from the internet. So basically what it's saying, folks, is very simple. That once it hits the MLS, it's very hard to control. Once it goes viral on the MLS, it's really hard to control and to remove. Now we can ask, and then my recommendation would be is if your seller or your buyers are very concerned, you may ask the listing agent to see before they close the MLS as a closed escrow to remove as many of the images from the MLS. I think you still have to have one image, but you know, sometimes, you know, listing agents put, you know, all the bedrooms, kitchens, and bathrooms. You may ask, you know, before they close the file, that they remove all the images from the MLS, which you could, the listing agent has the right to, and just keep that one photo of the main entrance of the main entry of the property. So again, and I know there's been sensitivity regarding that, but what this this paragraph says that we have no control whatsoever, and unfortunately, it's too bad. Attorney fees and costs. Okay, so pretty self-explanatory that if there is some avenues that there is potential lawsuits, that you know the attorney's fees and costs may be paid by the prevailing, I believe, the prevailing party. I think that's what it says. Assignment, basically, buyers shall have the right to assign all buyers' interests in this agreement by our own trust or in a whole own entity of buyer that is in existence at the time of such assignment. Otherwise, buyer shall not assign all or any part of the agreement. Now, again, as I said earlier, are the offers assignable? The answer is yes and no. As long as the seller is willing to accept the terms, if you need to assign it to a third party or someone else, then the answer is no, it's not assignable if the seller is not in agreement. And ultimately, the buyer would have to make a decision to buy the property or decide to cancel. Section 24, obviously the equal housing opportunity. Property is sold in compliance with federal, state, and local anti-discrimination laws. Remember, we do not practice any discriminatory practice, okay? Whoever wants to buy the property can and shall buy the property. We're not in the 30s and 40s and 50s anymore, okay? Where certain areas, only certain races were able to live or buy. That has been completely eliminated. And then the last section of 25 is definitions, acceptance. And this one, I definitely recommend that all of you read it time after time, okay? Because it'll give you all the answers. What is acceptance? What is agent? What is agreement? What is authorized agent? Although the property is sold in its as-is condition, seller shall disclose no material facts and defects of the date of the acceptance or otherwise specified, and seller is required to make any repairs specified in this agreement or otherwise agree. Buyer has the right to inspect the property and within the time specified, exercise any contingency cancellation rights in this agreement. So basically what it says there, folks, is, and I love what they added this as part of the definition, is that all property are sold in its as-is condition. But if something arises while in escrow, the seller is still responsible to take care of that. They cannot say, well, you know what, in 15, 20 days, this property is not going to be my home anymore. It's not my responsibility. The answer is no, that is incorrect. You as the seller are still responsible for the integrity of the property. If something happens, you need to fix it. And if it's something of a serious matter, you need to provide explanation and disclose that, excuse me, to the buyer. Okay.
Seller's phone warning.
Absolutely. Yeah. Authorized agent means any individual real estate agent specified in the real estate broker section. So when they say authorized agent, they're saying the brokerage and the agent representing the brokerage. Okay, that's what it means. Car forms, that was added, means most current version of the specified and reference. So what we're talking today is the current. In the future, that may change. So when they say car forms, they're always saying current version of the forms. Okay. Now, I had an agent many years ago stipulate and ask me, Simon, you know, can I use a previous purchase agreement because there was language in there that I liked and I like to keep to protect my party, my client? And what do you think I said?
I don't think so.
Well, you know, as a broker, I would say, well, you know, as compliant as I am, you want to use the most current forms for the protection of your client and yourself. But he said, well, I get it, but my client is perfectly fine. And he's gone through it, his attorney has gone through it, and they're fine to go with that form. So who am I to stop anyone from using anything? Can someone submit an offer on a napkin?
Yes.
I roll up this I unfold this, or I take it. As long as I put terms on here, right? This napkin here, date, price, terms, and conditions, and I have the buyer and seller sign. Do you think I can use this?
Yes.
And take this to escrow and say, I'd like to open escrow?
Yes, Nick had one like that.
Yeah. The answer is yes, you can. Because both buyer and seller agree to those terms. At the end of the day, it's not our home. It's not our loan. It's the buyer and the seller. So this will justify a bona fide agreement of acceptance. We don't recommend it. We would discourage you. But if you had an agreement signed and executed and dated, the judge would say it's an agreement. It's an agreement. Okay. Close of escrow. Close of escrow means the date the grantee or evidence of transfer of title is recorded for any real estate property of the date of delivery of the document evidence of transfer of title for any non-real estate transaction. So I think we all understand.
A question regarding
Yes, sir.
the napkin and everything. It hasn't happened in a long time, but previously in years, we would get an offer from a buyer where their attorney would get a red pen and just go through everything and write their own stuff in and hand it to us. They can still do that if they want.
As long as both agree to
If the
it,
seller agrees to it, right?
they can strike anything on the contract. Now, even if you strike something out of the purchase agreement or any of the disclosures, okay? Can we force a buyer or seller to sign off on any of the agreements?
No.
No, we cannot force anyone. We can provide them. And if they refuse to sign the agreements, you cannot force them. But what you can do is acknowledge that they refuse to sign. And we're going to disclose that, and we're going to document that the buyer or the seller refused to sign. If this ever comes back to bite us in the rear, we're going to say, look, Judge, we try to get the buyer or the seller to sign. And on this date, and even more so if you can put a time, at this date and time, the buyer refused to sign. Here's the evidence and the proof that we have accomplished our position and our responsibility. There's nothing that the judge can do to, sanction us or put us in a bad position, if that makes sense. But going back to your question, Chris, can an attorney come in here and strike anything and everything on the contract? Yeah, but the seller can now get an attorney and say, well, we're going to strike this and this and that. As long as there's mutual meeting of the minds between all parties, then it's perfectly fine. And then if something happens that one breaches the other contract, then we'll go back to what we have so far. Anything that's struck is basically that it's been eliminated. They could use that as an avenue to come back and say, well, we want to use that, that was struck and removed as part of the agreement. Unfortunately, it was taken out of the agreement, and here's the initials that stated that. Okay. Does that answer your question, Chris?
Yeah, I've never had a seller actually accept one of those offers, but we've had those offers in
Sure.
years past.
Yeah.
So they just look at it and go, what's this? Well, the attorney went through and goes, no, get rid of that offer.
Yeah.
That crap on my face.
And there's attorneys that are buyers, right? They'll review their own document and write their jargon on there, and it's really up to the seller to agree to it. They don't have to, and they could say, look, I just don't feel comfortable. I'd rather have that on the contract. Otherwise, I'm not going to sign off on it. And the seller has the right to decline that offer, and I go with the buyer. Terms and conditions of the offer, time of essence. Again, it's critical that all these forms are time of the essence. Okay, legal authorization to sign. Okay, whether the signature initials of the legal authorized signer identified in paragraph 32, and 32 is the signature area. Who is authorized? Is it a buyer, husband and wife, or is it an entity on behalf of the corporation? That's what it says about legally authorized to sign these contracts. Can someone 18 or older sign? Or better yet, can someone 17 or younger sign these contracts? Okay. Yeah, the answer is no, they can't. They're not of legal age to do so. So then this would mean that it's not a executed agreement. 29 goes into the liquidated damage provision. Obviously, buyer fails to complete the purchase. Buyer default, seller may have the right to retain up to 3% of the purchase agreement, or excuse me, of the deposit. Any excess of that amount shall be returned back to the buyer. So, for example, let's say that 3% is $20,000 deposit, but the buyer puts $50,000. If the buyer breaches the contract, $20,000 would stay with the seller, technically speaking, and the remainder of that $25,000 would have to go back to the buyer. Now, with that being said, I've seen contracts of the increased liquidated damage provision, which is known as the RID form. RID, RID. And if you put there that, that additional amount is incorporated as part of damages, then guess what? Now the seller has the right to go after the entire 50,000. And again, the buyer has to agree to that. The buyer can say, oh, wait a minute. I'm okay releasing 20,000 to the seller, but the 50,000, no way. And they can, counter that and say, no, we're not going to release that. We're not going to sign off on it, but it has to, again, be mutually agreed. 30 talks about mediation. We always talk about mediation, that if there is a dispute between buyer and seller, then let them mediate it. It's not our job. It's not our responsibility. Now, bring me as the broker involved in any type of situation that may look like it's getting kind of funny, okay? And I deal with it on a regular basis, folks, okay? I'm dealing with one right now, excuse me, with Gary Nix. I'm dealing with another one with J-Tab. And I'm okay to get involved, roll up my sleeves and help you navigate. That's what the broker's responsibility is, to help you. Now, if it gets too crazy where we need to get attorneys involved, then we'll get attorneys involved. That's why we have them. But at the end of the day, if there's no end resolution, we cannot come to an agreement, then basically we just take 2 steps back and let the buyer dispute this, let the seller dispute it, and let them go to mediation. Mediation is basically a mediator listening to both sides of the case. And then the mediator's job and responsibility is to make them come to some type of compromise or an agreement. That's it. And they get paid well to mediate. Gosh, I wish I could make some money in mediations. Okay. But yeah, that's their job. Now, if there's no meeting of the mind and they cannot mediate it, then you can ultimately escalate it into an arbitration, folks. Okay. An arbitration is usually a retired judge or an attorney that listens to both sides of the case. Now, it's similar, but not similar to a court hearing litigation. Someone will listen to it and you'll have the opening statement, the cross-examination, and your final argument on why you feel entitled to damages. You got to be prepared, similar like an attorney is ready to be prepared. You can bring all your exhibits as well and say, here's the reason we're entitled to that commission. This is the reason I'm entitled to the deposits. And it could be either or, the seller or the buyer. It would be nice if we can do a case study, mediation or even arbitration. Get people that do it on a regular basis come in here and do a practical mock mediation, arbitration, as I said. My first one that I did, folks, it was intense. I was nervous. I'll be the first to admit. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, and it was at the Arcadia Association of Realtors. And it was the retired judge or someone that was appointed, I can't remember. And then there was the party disputing commission. It was the broker, the owner, the broker, and the agent disputing a commission that we ended up getting. They wanted to get our $30,000 commission because they felt that they were the, what's the word? Procuring, thank you, procuring costs. And her argument was, well, that buyer came into my open house and that buyer's was the one that I influenced to let them know about this home. And because of that, she felt that she was entitled to a commission. Where our agent had a buyer representation agreement, had eventually shown the property again, submitted the offer, got the offer accepted, open escrow, closed escrow, and we got the commission. And this arbitration took about 8 months to finally finalize. And when I got it, I was surprised. I was like, no, he did not. And he did. He filed a case on us. So we had to prepare for it, and yeah, we went there, and that was one of my first procuring costs cases, and yeah, we ended up winning. But yeah, it was one of my first experience, and it was like,
What a waste of time.
uh,
What a waste of time.
it was really a waste of time, yeah, really a waste of time. So that goes into the mediation and also the arbitration disputes. And then if you look at 31, it goes through all the mumbled jargon right here, folks, okay? The parties agree, the parties disagree, the parties exclusions, the parties preservation of action. The agents shall not be obligated nor compelled to mediate or arbitrate unless they agree to do so in writing. It goes just through all the legality of it. Notice by initials in the space below, you are agreeing to have any disputes arise out of this matter, including in the arbitration of dispute provision, decide by a neutral arbitrator as provided by the California law, and you're giving up any rights you may pose to have the dispute litigated in a court or jury trial. The reason you go through an arbitration is because it's less expensive than getting attorneys involved and then trying to sue one another. And now the E&O insurance is included. And then if they want to take it to a jury trial, because remember, every attorney avoids trial. Why? Because it's a coin toss. It's a coin toss. And what I mean by that is that you might have a compelling argument and your exhibits are all, and you have all the proven evidence. And the jury may see it otherwise. It only takes one, just one, to say, well, I didn't see it that way, and it alters the whole case. This is why attorneys don't like to go to trial, because it's a hit and miss, it's a gamble, it's a coin toss. And I remember one of my first jury sessions, I was on a domestic violence case. We knew the guy beat up the girlfriend. She had black eye, she had a busted lip, we had pictures, we knew. But there was not enough evidence from the prosecution. Guess what? We didn't see it that way, and we ended up not finding the guy guilty. It's ironic, but it's so true. So this is the reason they avoid all that. 32, offer at expiration. Obviously, remember we said, you know, the seller and the buyer has three days or otherwise to submit an offer, and then eventually 3 days it would expire. Entities, buyers, if there's any entities involved, such as the corporation, a trust, then the representative capacity form, the RCSD form is required. And it goes through all those motions, and then the signatures of the buyer or buyers are included. And then if the offer gets accepted, 33, offer accepted, seller counter offer. If the seller does not, does not agree to the terms of this, then the seller will check off either the the SCO or the SMCO, the seller counter offer or the seller multiple counter offer. And if the property will be as a backup, then the BUO form must be included with this offer. Okay. And that pretty much concludes. And then this last is the real estate broker section. You know, brokers, companies, licenses, who's involved, and the seller's broker information. Escrow will fill out this in part here. And if the offer is presented, and then it would be signed off right here. And there was one other section here. Right here, offer not accepted. So if you represent the seller and you know that this offer is not going to be considered or nor accepted, then the seller must initial the purchase agreement, right here where it says offer not accepted, no counter offer is being made, and the offer will not accepted by the seller on so and so date. So my recommendation to be transparent, and that way I don't get the calls or your broker gets the calls. When you have multiple offers come in, you know, and you don't respond on a timely manner, what happens is the buyer's agent will call the broker, hey, we submitted an offer and we haven't heard from Simon, what's going on? You know, well, I don't know, let me find out for you. And then I call the agent and the agent says, yeah, you know, I got 20 offers. I says, okay, so do me a favor, can you just reach out to the buyer's agent and say that their offer is not considered? Well, to be in compliance, all you have to do is have the seller initial this page and date it, and you're going to send the first and the this page to the buyer's agent, and that satisfies your responsibility of decline offer. Okay, so with that being said, folks, that concludes, boy, oh boy, our time, and we finished on time, 3 hours.
Yeah, Simon, one
Yes.
of the other new things though is the alternate designated electronic delivery address where they're accepting emails, texts, etc.
Yeah.
for acceptance.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of information here, and like Sue mentioned, part of that is now email transmissions. Remember when we used to use fax machines? Is fax machines still in existence?
Yep.
They are. I think they're copy machines or fax machines. Yeah. But again, that kind of generalizes your position with the new RPA. You know, they typically will introduce this on zip forms the first week of December. But again, I've seen it the first week, I've seen it the second week. You'll know as soon as you're ready to write an offer or you're constantly looking at your car forms, you'll see when the changes are. But this new form will be in effect come this December, okay, which is around the corner. Again, I stress and I emphasize the importance to continue getting education on this. One of the recommendations is obviously get this book. Okay, this has step-by-step illustrations, and this is like my guide when it comes to certain paragraphs of the book. So, book that I definitely recommend. With that, any questions? All right, I don't think we have any questions. Beautiful. Well, I appreciate you all for being here in class and also on Zoom. All right. Take care. Have a phenomenal rest of your afternoon. Fantastic weekend as well. Thanks, Michelle, for hanging in there. Thanks.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon.
Thanks, Simon.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for lunch.
My pleasure.
You know, it's gone.